night was thick with heat, the kind that clung to your skin and made the air feel heavy. Streetlights flickered, casting long, uneasy shadows on the cracked pavement. The hum of cicadas filled the silence, a droning reminder of the stillness that surrounded me. The houses stood dark and lifeless, their windows like empty eyes watching the street. As I stepped forward, the warmth of home faded behind me, replaced by something colder, something unseen. A feeling crept up my spine, a whisper in the dark, telling me I wasn't alone. But I kept walking, into the night. Stepping onto the porch, I inhaled the thick summer air. The wooden boards creaked beneath my feet as I clipped the leash onto Ozzy, his tail wagging, oblivious to the weight pressing on my chest. I grabbed my flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness, barely reaching the cracked pavement ahead. The porch light behind me cast a weak glow, but beyond that, only shadows. The world outside felt different tonight. Quieter, heavier. I took a deep breath, pushing the unease aside. Just a short walk, I told myself. Just around the block. Then, I stepped off the porch. The night felt different. Each step forward felt slower, heavier, like the air itself was pushing back. The flashlight's beam swayed left and right, illuminating nothing but empty pavement and swaying tree branches. Yet deep in my gut, I felt it, that creeping sensation of unseen eyes burrowing into my back. I swallowed hard, glancing over my shoulder. Nothing, just the quiet street stretching endlessly behind me. My heart pounded louder than my footsteps. It was probably just my imagination, just paranoia. But no matter how many times I told myself that, the feeling wouldn't go away. Ozzy stopped. His body stiffened, ears perked, nose twitching as he sniffed the thick night air. A low, uneasy growl rumbled in his throat. I froze, my grip tightening on the leash. He wasn't just distracted. He sensed something. His head darted left, then right, scanning the shadows. I followed his gaze, my breath shallow. The darkness beyond my flashlight felt deeper now, like it was hiding something just beyond reach. I whispered his name, but he didn't budge. My skin prickled. If Ozzy was afraid, maybe I should be too. Something was out there, and it was watching. Ahead, the dim glow of a porch light flickered. My friend's dad stood there, leaning against the railing, cigarette smoke curling around him. His eyes locked onto me, then past me, into the darkness. I barely had time to speak before he asked, his voice low and serious, "Is one of your parents following you?" My stomach dropped. I turned, scanning the empty street. Nothing, just shadows stretching between the trees. He straightened, his posture tense. Without hesitation, he stepped off the porch, one hand slipping behind his back. "Come out now," he called. "I am armed." Silence. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Then, movement. A blur of shadow peeled away from the tree line, sprinting into the darkness beyond my flashlight's reach. My breath hitched. It was fast. Too fast. My friend's dad tensed, his grip firm on whatever he had behind his back. For a split second, the light caught something. Tall, unnaturally thin, its limbs moving in jerky, inhuman motions. No face, no features, just a shifting black mass that disappeared into the night. Ozzy barked wildly, straining against his leash. My legs felt rooted in place. What had I just seen? What was watching me? My friend's dad took a step forward, his voice sharp and commanding. "I said come out! Now!" But there was no response, only the distant rustling of leaves. The thing, whatever it was, had vanished, slipping deeper into the night like it had never been there at all. Ozzy whimpered, his tail tucked, his body trembling. My skin crawled. The air felt heavier, charged with something unseen. My friend's dad exhaled slowly, then turned to me. "Come on, kid. I'm walking you home." I didn't argue. I just nodded, gripping Ozzy's leash tighter. Somehow I knew it wasn't over yet. The walk home felt endless. The night pressed in from all sides, the streetlights flickering weakly above us. Each step felt heavier. My heart beat loud in my ears. My friend's dad walked beside me, his eyes scanning the shadows, his posture tense. Ozzy stayed close, his tail low, ears twitching at every distant sound. I wanted to run, to get inside and lock the door, but fear kept my legs slow, cautious. The house finally came into view. A single, warm light glowing from the window. Safety. Relief. But even then I couldn't shake the feeling. Something was still watching. Days passed, but the fear never left me. That night lingered in my mind, a whisper of something unfinished. Then, one evening I saw it again. Standing at the edge of my driveway, just beyond the reach of the flickering streetlight, motionless, watching. My breath caught in my throat. No features, no face, just a dark, elongated figure, impossibly still. I didn't move. I couldn't. It stood there for what felt like forever. Then, as if sensing my gaze, it turned slowly, silently, and walked back into the night. The shadows swallowed it whole, and I never saw it again. There are places where the night belongs to more than just the dark. Places where silence is not empty, but waiting. A small, unfinished house stands alone at the edge of the Virginia woods, swallowed by the creeping fog. Wind stirs the twisted branches, their skeletal forms reaching toward the structure like grasping fingers. Inside, everything is still. The man sleeps, unaware that something has already begun. A presence lurks just beyond the trees, watching, waiting. The darkness presses in, heavy and unnatural. Tonight the silence will break, and whatever waits outside will finally make itself known. The clock strikes 2 a.m. The house is silent, wrapped in darkness, then a sound, a faint rattle at the door. Soft, deliberate. The doorknob twists as if tested by unseen hands. The man's eyes snap open. His breath stills. Slowly, he climbs down from the loft, each step echoing in the quiet. He reaches for the knob. It moves again. A cold dread washes over him. Someone, something, is outside, waiting, watching. He steps back, heart pounding. The locked door is his only barrier, but the night is patient and whatever is out there isn't leaving. His hand hovers over the doorknob, fingers trembling. The metal is cold, too cold. Before he can touch it, it moves again. A slow, deliberate twist. Not frantic, not hurried. Controlled. His pulse hammers in his ears. He backs away, swallowing hard. The shades are drawn, the door is locked. Yet a presence lingers just beyond, unseen but undeniably there. Then, scraping, a slow, deliberate drag of something sharp against the wooden walls, moving, circling. His breath catches. It's not trying to get in. It's letting him know it's already here. The sound slithers along the walls. A slow, scraping drag. Wood groans under the pressure as if something sharp is tracing its surface. It moves around the house, circling, calculating. The man stands frozen, his skin crawling, his breath shallow. He wants to move, to run, but something deeper, primal, holds him in place. Then, silence. The air feels heavier, thicker, as if the walls themselves are holding their breath. And then, thud, a single heavy footstep. Not outside above, something is on the roof. Metal groans under unseen weight. Another step, then another. Slow, deliberate, impossible. The man's breath catches. The roof is steep, slick with metal. No human could walk across it. And yet, something does. The footsteps move, steady and patient, gliding toward the small attic window. He stares, paralyzed, waiting for a face, some monstrous thing peering in. But there is nothing. No shadow, no form, just an overwhelming presence pressing against the air. Then, silence. The footsteps stop, but the feeling remains. It's still there, watching, waiting. The man grips his pistol, fingers slick with sweat. His eyes stay locked on the attic window, heart hammering. Nothing moves, no footsteps, no shadow, just an unbearable, suffocating silence. Then, a breath. Faint, almost imagined, a whisper of air against the glass. He tightens his grip, ready to fire, but hesitation creeps in. What if there's nothing to shoot outside? The wind shifts, rattling the walls. The feeling lingers. Something is still there, but it's not moving, not leaving. As if it no longer needs to. As if It's already inside. Dawn breaks, casting pale light through the trees. The man steps outside, breath clouding in the cold morning air. The woods are still. Too still. He scans the ground. No footprints, no broken branches, no sign that anyone or anything was ever here. Slowly, he looks up at the roof. Pristine. Untouched. As if the night's horrors were nothing more than a dream. But deep inside, he knows better. The silence feels different now, not empty. Waiting. The night took something with it, or worse, it left something behind. And whatever it was, it's not finished. The summer night was thick with heat, the air heavy and still. He walked his dog along the empty suburban street, the only sound the soft padding of paws on pavement. The streetlights flickered, casting long, distorted shadows that stretched unnaturally across the sidewalk. The silence felt too deep, too unnatural. A warm breeze rustled the trees, yet the world seemed frozen. As he passed under the dim glow of the lamps, he couldn't shake the feeling that something unseen was watching. The night was quiet, too quiet, and in the distance the park loomed, dark and waiting. As he entered the park, the air grew heavier, the silence stretching unnaturally long. His eyes scanned the dimly lit path, then stopped. A figure sat motionless on a bench beneath a towering, gnarled tree. It didn't move, didn't shift, just sat there, rigid, staring into the darkness. The streetlights above flickered, distorting its silhouette. He told himself it was nothing, just someone enjoying the night. But something felt wrong. The figure's posture was unnatural, its presence unsettling. His dog hesitated, ears twitching. He forced himself forward, keeping his gaze ahead. But the feeling of being watched lingered. He stopped, glancing back. The bench was empty. The figure was gone. His breath hitched as unease crept up his spine. He scanned the area. Nothing. No footsteps, no sound, just the eerie stillness of the night. The streetlights buzzed softly, casting restless shadows across the pavement. His dog whined, shifting uneasily. He swallowed hard, telling himself the person had simply walked away. But deep down, something felt off. The silence wasn't normal. It was watching, waiting. A chill crept through the warm air. Shaking it off, he turned back to the path and kept walking, heart pounding in his chest. He rounded the corner, eyes drifting toward the park's open field. Beneath the weak glow of scattered streetlights, something sat in the middle of the grass, a dark, motionless shape. His mind grasped for logic. A forgotten bag, a pile of clothes. But as he stepped closer, a sickening realization set in. It wasn't an object. It was a person. The same figure from the bench, crouched, facing him. His breath caught. The air felt heavier, pressing against his skin. The night was warm, yet an icy dread coiled in his gut. Why was it just sitting there, waiting? His footsteps slowed, his pulse hammering in his ears. The figure remained crouched in the field, motionless, facing him. Now, in the dim glow of the streetlights, its details became clearer. A man, medium build, dressed entirely in black. A thick sweater clung to him, too heavy for the sweltering July heat. Yet his face, it was obscured, swallowed by shadows. The air around him felt wrong, suffocating, as if reality itself was bending. His instincts screamed for him to leave, but he couldn't move. The figure wasn't just there, it was waiting, and worst of all, it knew he saw it. His breath caught as he took a slow step backward. The figure remained still, crouched in the darkness. Then, without warning, it moved, a blur of black, lunging forward with impossible speed. In less than 2 seconds, it closed the distance. His body seized with terror as he stumbled back, barely reacting in time. His heart slammed against his ribs. The night swallowed all sound except his own ragged breathing. He forced out the words, his voice unsteady. "What the hell are you doing?" The figure stopped. A pause, then a whisper, chilling and deliberate. "I was waiting for you to come here." His stomach twisted. The man's words echoed in his head, cold and deliberate. He took a shaky step back, then another. never breaking eye contact. The figure didn't move, didn't flinch, just stared. Slowly he turned and walked away, his pulse hammering in his ears. His dog whimpered, sensing his fear. He glanced back. The figure was still there, another few steps forward. He looked again, closer, too close. Yet he never saw it move. A sickening dread crawled up his spine. He quickened his pace, heart pounding. But no matter how far he walked, the figure was always closer. His breath came in short, sharp gasps. He forced himself forward, eyes locked straight ahead. Just keep walking, don't run, don't panic. But something was wrong, terribly wrong. He had only looked away for a second, yet when he turned back, the figure was right there, just feet away. But it never moved, not once. His skin prickled with cold despite the stifling heat. The air around him felt thick, suffocating. His vision blurred at the edges. His instincts screamed, run. But his legs felt frozen. He willed himself to move. Then, with a racing heart, he bolted into the night. He ran. His feet pounded against the pavement, breath ragged, heart slamming against his ribs. The night blurred around him, streetlights streaking past. His dog yelped in his arms, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. He risked a glance back. His stomach lurched. The figure wasn't running, it wasn't even moving. Yet somehow, impossibly, it was still right behind him. A silent, looming shadow, closing the distance without a single step. Panic clawed at his throat. He pushed harder, legs burning. The park's exit was ahead, just a little further. He didn't dare look back again. He just ran. His house was in sight. His lungs burned, legs screaming for relief, but he didn't slow down. He sprinted up the steps, fumbling with his keys, fingers trembling. Behind him, the street was empty. No figure, no sound. But the air felt thick, suffocating, as if something unseen still lurked just beyond the glow of the streetlights. He shoved the door open, slammed it shut, locking it in one frantic motion. His chest heaved as he pressed his back against the door. Silence. Only his pounding heart filled the void. But deep down, he knew. Whatever it wasn't gone.